Hey guys, welcome back for some more tutorials. My name's Magnet, and today we're going to be talking about using Blink in PvT. We're going to be talking a lot about how to get it started, how to control your Blink stalkers, and how to make the right transitions off of your Blink play. Blink is a really flexible opener. There's a lot of different things you can do with it, but more importantly, it'll be more for kind of gateway-centric styles. There's also a lot of other different things that you can do with it as well, but we're going to be focusing mostly on how to open with it and how to transition, assuming you are attracted to this style. I'm totally derping this out, but either way, we'll jump into the game here. First game we're going to take a look at is Little Bow versus 4GG. And the openers on this type of build are going to be pretty much the same as what we've seen in most of the other videos. So if you need help with openers specifically, getting up to a second Nexus, then you probably want to go back and watch some other videos that are in my playlist, which is linked down below. But we're just going to be looking at, once that expansion is up and going, some transitions into Blink here. So Little Bow is just going to go ahead and take the one gas like you normally do with this type of expansion build. Saturate it with just two right away, and then he saturates it with a third. Dropping his core immediately after the gateway. Nothing too crazy going on here. Starts a Zealot just to be sure there's nothing blocking this base. You can let that finish if you want to, but he opts not to, so he just goes ahead and drops the expansion. And we've talked about this opener many times. This is a really standard one gate expand. There's really no units out. The next unit's going to be a mothership core. This is all really normal. Second gas immediately after the Nexus is dropped. And then from here is when you're going to start getting into your Blink. And you can do this a number of ways. You could start off with a Robo first if you wanted to be super safe. But most players will start off with a Twilight Council and a Forge. And they'll just use the Forge in case they need to drop cannons against things like mine drops or things like that. So this is a little bit kind of reactionary, I guess. It's a little more advanced type of build. You will need to kind of finagle a little bit against mines and things like that if you run into those types of openers. But it's still possible. If you want to be super safe, you can just go Robo first and just play defensively with the Blink. But more specifically, we're going to be talking about how to be aggressive with the Blink and then transition afterwards if that doesn't really do anything. This isn't meant to win the game with Blink, even though sometimes you will with this, and that's kind of the whole idea here. We're going to be talking a lot about the transitions afterward, and we won't see a lot of the transitions because it's kind of hard to find those types of games from back when this took place, which was Season 1 of WCS. But I'll talk about them a little bit once the time comes. So back at home, he's making a Stalker, and you definitely want to get those out against any sort of weird early attacks. Usually Reapers coming in is pretty common. The Mothership Core can push that away, no problem. Second Stalker on the way is going to help again against a lot of those earlier pushes with lots of random units. And then Twilight Council comes down immediately afterward. We'll note the timing and roughly the supply if you want to directly copy this build. And the second Stalker's done. After this, you're going to want to think about adding on some gateways, because you could be susceptible to some random timings that can come out here, especially with Widow Mines, and that's kind of what we're going to see here from 4GG. So this is kind of a worst case scenario for this type of build. There's no detection right now, even though the mines are coming out, but you can still manage with it okay. Even if you have to just let a probe die and then build a cannon, it's still okay to as long as you can pull those away from the mine in time. So it does take a little bit of proactivity and a little bit of reaction time to keep that up. And he's scouting out here with his Mothership Core just so he can see what's inside the Terran main. So he's going to be looking out for things like mines coming out, so he knows how to react with this Mothership Core. You don't have to scout like this, and you can just go for a blind Forge if you really want to. But the pros to Blink is that if they try for those really aggressive styles where they just attack you over and over, the Blink will manage that really well, assuming you can keep all your stuff alive. So there's a second gateway coming down, as well as a third. He doesn't quite know whether or not he wants to drop a Forge yet, or a Robo. It's usually going to be Forge more often than not. He starts up Blink. Of course, on the Terran side, he knows everything. He knows this is going to be Blink, because he can see everything that went down with that Reaper. So this is an instance where the Terran's going to react properly, and he's not going to take virtually any damage from that Blink. And this is just to show that even if the Blink doesn't do damage, which it can, but it's not exactly designed to, you're still going to be just fine, assuming you transition properly. So the Mothership Core gets in there and recalls out. The Forge is now on the way because he's not sure. He didn't really see much. I guess he saw a lot more than I thought. So he does know what's going on here. This may have been pre-Mothership Core vision nerf, so that's something else to take into account. But he knows what's going on, so he starts a Forge. And against any sort of play where they have this fast of a factory and this fast of a starport, you definitely want to put those cannons down. So here's a cannon coming down the mineral line, second one in the other mineral line, and then from here, it's just wait for Blink to finish and get a lot of stalkers out. You'll note that he also does have a proxy pylon out here because you will want forward reinforcement. Like I was talking about before, the Terran's doing what he's supposed to, which is these tanks. He could alternatively put mines around the place just to deflect against any stalkers trying to blink into his mineral line. And here's the drop right now. As long as you have the cannons coming down and you don't lose those to the drop, and as long as you can pull probes away from the mine drop, then you'll be totally fine against that. And honestly, these openers are going to get a lot more common as time goes on. So you can see him pulling his workers away. He only loses one worker to the mine, which is perfect if you want to run this type of opener. You really can't ask for much better trades. So just losing one worker to the mine, it really does put you ahead. Here's a second mine here, and you can see that it also just gets the one kill on that probe. May have killed two. I don't think so, though. Yeah, maybe it did. But either way, 1 or 2 kills, not a big deal. And now 4GG has to defend against this little timing here. So we can look at the clock. That's kind of weird. I always catch this mid-blink somehow, but we can look at the clock here and note that it's about 8:30. He has about 8 stalkers on the field. He's moving across the map with his mothership core. Back at home, he's just on these 3 gateways in this forge. So like I said, this isn't meant to kill. And back at home also, once he's moving out, he's starting to take his extra gases at the natural. So a move like this isn't meant to kill, even though sometimes it will. So this is just kind of one of those plays where you can be a little bit of aggressive, but behind it you also need to hit your transitions properly, because if it doesn't kill or if it doesn't do a lot of damage, then you're going to have to defend yourself from a counterattack. So back at home, you can see his infrastructure. He's moving across the map here. Just kind of fast forward a little bit until he gets there. 4GG is set up just fine against this. So the ultimate goal with this type of attack is you really just don't want to lose units. So don't get too wild about starting to kill a lot of stuff unless you break him and he's having a really hard time recovering against it. Caught the mule in midair, by the way. So stalkers come up here. We'll start to slow this down. He's going to start to take a couple shots on this bunker here. You usually don't want to fight through repair if you possibly can, so he's starting to just pick off individual SCVs to start getting some worker kills with this. And again, the first priority is just keeping everything alive. So, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in another video, but the obvious micro with blink is as soon as the shields come down on the stalker, just blink it back, and you just have to keep an eye on your army, make sure you have the health bars enabled so you can see that. And once the shields come all the way down, just blink it to the back, and keep doing that over and over until you really feel like there's nothing worth blinking anymore, in which case you just need to run away and let the shields recharge. So that's all we're seeing here. Nothing too crazy. He's not going to try to break a bunker that's trying to be repaired. And if you ever get hit by a siege tank, that's probably a good sign that you probably just want to go home, because you're not really going to break siege tanks very well. And this also goes if they have mines in the main. Even if they open mines, I wouldn't be too hasty about blinking into the main. I would just see what you can get. So thus far, he really has only lost, I don't even think he's lost a stalker yet. He's killed 3 workers. He's very safe from a counterattack. He's forced 4GG to maybe play in a way that he doesn't want to. So we'll just keep going for now. He's going to do something I don't totally agree with here. He's just going to move his hurt stalkers out of the way. He's going to try to pick off this tank and then get out of there. So he picks off the tank, he loses 1 stalker, he loses his mothership core, and that's at the point where you just need to be like, alright, this isn't really working. So back at home, what's the transition here? There's a few you can do, and the quickest and easiest one is just to go charge immediately afterward, which we can see charge researching right here, and +1 armor, and start getting into more Templar play. And that's the transition we're going to see here. And you'll note that during these attacks, sometimes it can be a little bit hard to keep putting up buildings and spending all your money. So Little Bow after this is just going to go immediately for extra gateways. You can see him drop those now. So coming back across the map here, this is just regulating into a normal game. But you will have strong transitions here, assuming you hit those all on time. I should also mention that a transition into Colossus here is possible, but it's not the quickest transition. Honestly, I'd really favor this charge transition a lot earlier and the storm transition more than I would the Colossus, but if you really get creative with your timings, maybe drop the Robo as your stalkers are walking across the map, and then if you can put the Robo Bay while your stalkers are harassing, you could go Colossus, but that's a little more clunky. Either way, it's up to you as to how you want to transition here. So he's going up to 8 gateways. Getting the armor upgrades is good as well. You start Storm as soon as the Templar Archives is done. And then from here, all he has to do is really play defensively, and he has all the defensive tools he'd really want, which is the Blink, the Storm, and the Charge. They're all really great defensive tools in this matchup. Not so great offensive tools. That's why you're eventually going to want to switch if the game goes on longer. So since the stalkers are out on the map like this, you can be a little more aggressive and kind of leave them out like this as soon as you can keep it, or rather assuming you can keep an eye on them. You can pick off a couple units and just blink out of there, assuming you have the ability to do that. So he just picks off a Marine, blinks out. Sometimes these medevacs will be leaking forward. Maybe you can get one of those and blink away. So there's a lot of utility with this. So he gets the medevac as well as a couple of other Marines. Let me slow this down. And by the time the attack gets there, because he bought time with that blink, now he has Storm ready. And now he can hit the Terran at the middle of the map where he's not going to be expecting him. So from the Terran's position, all he sees is this. All he sees is a Mothership Core and some Stalkers. And if you're really creative with your spell casting here, you can crush armies when they're out on the map like this, because Blink allows you to catch up with them, not really let them run away that well. And Storm, as we talked about in another video, it's a great defensive tool if you can place it down properly. So the Terran's attacking in here. He goes ahead and drops a Time Warp. And now the Terran's like, oh man, this is so bad. I'm stuck in a Time Warp. And guess what's coming next? Wham! Storm right on the army. Blink Stalkers, blink forward. And there's just nowhere for this Terran army to go. So this is why this is so powerful. There's so many good defensive tools, and especially the blink, being able to blink on top of retreating armies and kind of kill stuff as it tries to run away. All really, really good things if you're running a build like this. So, like we noted, the blink didn't really do anything on that attack timing, but its power just continues to grow as you're able to chase this down. I should also mention one more thing, is that PvT really comes down to getting splash damage out. So this is the most important part of this army. Once you make that initial Stalker push, there's really not much of a reason to make more Stalkers. They don't really kill that quickly. I'd say Zealots are better for your money. So I want to note that you don't just keep making Stalkers after this. You get into Storm, you get into Colossus, you take a third base like we're seeing here. And this is kind of just ideal scenarios in the sense that you didn't really do much with the blink, but the transitions were really good. And you can crush armies like that. You can look at the supply now. He can even blink on top of the medevacs, and 4GG just says, wow, I'm dead, and that's game over. So really, really cool game. That was one of my favorite games I've seen in a long time involving blink openers and transitioning into Storm. Gonna wait for this to load, and we'll go ahead and start the second game here. This game is going to demonstrate more about your ability to control the map and kind of punish Terran for being too aggressive against the blink. So we'll see Crank here. It's a player we're going to watch against Alive. Both these guys really good. This is obviously from WCS America, so getting nice and versatile up in here. There's nothing to be said after that type of transition. So here's Crank hanging out up here at the top of the map. And the opener is going to be pretty much the same as we've always seen. You're not going to see many games where they change anything up too much. So the opener is going to be, again, it's just one gas. Mining with 3 on each, or rather 3 on the gas. Going to maybe start a, or rather he's going to start a core. He'll start a Zealot. He's going to scout out to see if there's anything weird going on. And if there's not, he can always cancel the Zealot and just put the Nexus down. In this case, he lets it finish, which is a little different. It'll protect against really aggressive Reaper plays, maybe a weird proxy or something. It'll also especially deflect any sort of attempt at a Nexus block. And right as I say, this is going to be pretty much the same. This is actually going to be a little bit different. This is something you can mix into your builds a little more, is this little Zealot Stalker Mothership play. That's not too important, though. We might have a separate video on stuff like that. Basically, all this is going to do is get up here and see if you can get lucky and kill some workers, but almost always they'll be able to finish the bunker and defend against this, so I wouldn't worry too much about the opener. And then behind it, of course, the Nexus is the most important aspect. The blink is immediately following it up, and something cute you can do to kind of throw your Terran opponents off is you can proxy this, which is what Crank is doing. So if the Terran drops a scan here and they look in your base and don't see any Twilight Council, they're going to be like, this is weird. But you'll know, and obviously you'll have an advantage of him not knowing that you're going to be going blink. And if they try to get aggressive against that, like we're talking about, then they should get punished pretty hard. So we'll fast forward here. Again, taking the second gas immediately after the Nexus. Really important to make sure you have enough gas to produce your Stalkers regularly. He does have a probe out here ready to drop a pylon, so you can drop these incrementally, so you have one kind of far away and then one maybe a little closer if you need to get closer up. So that's always an option. The blink is on the way now. And on the Terran perspective, he's looking to hit a little bit of a timing here. This is some pretty fast barracks. He's building a third one as well. Factory is just a tad late, maybe going a little bit more aggressive than he should be, but he doesn't really know what's going on right now. So Kind of hard to fault him for that. And Crank's going to do something a little different than what we saw in the previous game. The previous player just went for the 3 gateways and a forge, just to be a little bit more defensive. Crank is willingly taking some risk though, and he's just assuming that there's no factory in here. Maybe he has a read that tells him that from one way or another, but I would honestly play a little bit more of the conservative style. Maybe just get the forge and the 3 gateways, maybe a 4th gateway if you really want to. But if you're somebody that likes to take risks and likes to do stuff like this, you can go for the 5th gate and no detection if you're really confident that you won't be having trouble against mines, but it should be noted that mines are basically a flat-out counter to this type of opener. So Crank coming up here, you can see the Marines did pick off that Stalker there, so you do need to be careful with your units, of course. Now that Blink is almost finished up, he does have these forward reinforcement points, and this is what the Terrans sometimes can do. They can sometimes just be like, I'm going to throw these few units at you, because a lot of the Protoss openers nowadays open up with very few units, so these types of attacks can deal a lot of damage. Of course, because he has the mothership core out, you can see this, and he does just throw on a time warp to try and save the mothership core. He's scouting in here now to see what's going on, and maybe just trying to get away from this army to keep that alive. This is the most overly important thing, but you need to note that you can't blink into the main unless you have vision up there, so you really do need to keep that alive if you want to keep up the pressure. But this is going to be a little bit different of a game, and like I was talking about with the incremental pylons, the first pylon dies, but he still has a reinforcement point across the map, so that's also another important thing to note. So getting these 5 gateways up is Crank. Like I said, this is a lot more aggressive than we saw in the last game, so really a lot more reliant on the blink dealing damage. But the attack is moving out now, and Crank should be able to handle this. So right now he's got some Stalkers moving across the map. It might seem like he doesn't really understand what's going on here, and it may be true. He just might not know this army left to go on that side of the map. But he still has, you know, spotting things around here. He probably knows. And either way, Blink is the type of thing where you should be able to micro yourself out of bad situations. So Stalkers are coming forward here, and they're going to kind of run right into this army and be like, uh-oh, this isn't very good. They turn around. Again, you can just do the regular Blink micro, blink it back as soon as the shields come off of it. And then from the other side, he has these other Stalkers that are going to rally forward, as well as some warp in points. He can warp in here if there's no units back there. He can deal some damage. He can warp in back at home and just get a surround on this army out here. But either way, the point being is that if you can control properly, these types of attacks should get crushed, because you're always deciding what is taking damage between your units. So look at the full surround on the Stalkers here, and you just always want to move the hurt Stalkers away from the damage the best you can, whether it's by blink or by walking it away if it's on cooldown, which you can see on this Stalker. But these types of attacks should really get crushed, assuming you can control your blink properly. You can see him still just walking away the hurt units, and now all of a sudden Alive lost basically his entire army, and Crank has 11 Stalkers on the field. So if Alive can't handle the counterattack, then that's just basically going to kill him. So we're seeing more and more Stalkers warped in here. And we might note the complete lack of a transition right now from Crank, but I think that's partially because he just crushed an army and he thinks he can kill him right now. He still has the resources if he wanted to, well, just about, to start charge and start getting into the next phase of the game if he absolutely needed to. But this is the type of situation where if they just attack at you with those early units and they can't really do much with it and you just control properly, then you could likely just walk across the map and kill him. So this is a lot of Stalkers right now, and all you have to do is just a very basic blink micro of just keeping your stuff alive, and you should be totally fine. You can see him blinking back the hurt units, and throwing down the time warp there, of course, really important because they can't micro very well against the blink. And he just aggressively blinks forward, and Alive's like, well, I'm dead because I got too aggressive against something that I didn't know was coming. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do with Blink, and I hope this at least gave you guys some ideas as far as what you can do. Of course, if you have any questions or anything, post them down in the comments. I do have more Protoss tutorials that you can take a look at. It's just a link down in the description, so look out for that. But I'll be back very soon, and thanks for watching. I'll see you later.